This is Bob Serling for 10-Minute Tips for Maximum Health, and today I'm talking with Dr. Srini Pillay. Dr. Pillay is an MD, an assistant clinical professor at Harvard Medical School, and the founder and CEO of the Neuro Business Group. His cutting-edge company is dedicated to enhancing human possibility and potential, as well as teaching people how to lead happier and more productive lives based on the most recent research from psychology and brain science. Regarded as one of the world's leading experts on burnout, stress, and anxiety, he's been featured in Cosmopolitan, Martha Stewart Whole Living, the New York Times, Forbes magazine, Investors Business Daily, and many other media outlets. Dr. Pillay also writes for the Huffington Post and the Harvard Business Review. I'm very pleased to have him share his cutting-edge wisdom with us today, so welcome, Srini.
Bob, thanks so much for having me.
Well, thank you for taking the time today. My question for you is, what's the single best thing you'd recommend people do for maximum health benefits right now?
You know, there are so many different things that I think we can do for maximum health benefits, but the first thing that comes to mind when you mention that is reduce stress. And I'll tell you why I think about that. I mean, I'm a little biased because my background is in psychiatry, brain imaging, and anxiety. So I've seen a lot of people change the quality of their lives by figuring out how to manage their anxiety. But by the same token, you know, being a doctor, when you look at the causes of major medical illnesses, whether it's cancer, whether it's inflammatory disorders, whether it's infections, whether it's the weight problems, regardless of what the problem is, stress always features in the top 10 causes of that particular category. And so, you know, I would even go out on a limb and say, I don't know anything else that features in the top 10 causes as much as stress does across the entire spectrum of medical illnesses. So from my perspective, learning how to manage your stress and having some important tools at your beck and call in order to curb your anxiety is really helpful. And one of the things I would love to share with people today is how you can do this in a fairly concrete way by changing the blood flow in your brain.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I'd love to hear that.
Sure. So the basic idea here is that when you are anxious or when you're afraid or when you're feeling like you're under threat or when stress is taking over, there's a part of your brain, which is the anxiety center in the brain, also called the amygdala, that receives a lot of blood flow. And as a result of this part of the brain gets activated. And one of the things we know is that because the amygdala or the anxiety center is connected to the thinking brain, when you start getting these earthquakes in the amygdala, it actually starts to impact what's going on in the thinking brain because it's connected directly. And as a result of that, it's difficult to make decisions. You feel like you're hitting a wall in your decision making, and you're actually affecting the rest of your body as well, because in addition to the amygdala being connected to your thinking brain, it's also connected to the rest of your body because impulses can go down into pretty much everywhere in your body. So for this reason, learning how to manage the anxiety that impacts your amygdala is incredibly important. Now, how do you do this? Well, extensive research has actually looked at how can we take this blood flow that's going to the anxiety center and move it to where we need it. Move it to the thinking brain so we can make better decisions. Move it to the thinking brain so that we can find creative ways out of the situations that we're stuck in. And how do you move it away from the anxiety brain back into the frontal cortex where you can actually assess risks properly and think more clearly? Now, you know, a lot of this affects not just what's going on, as I said, in the frontal lobe, but the rest of your physiology as well, because the heart and brain are also connected, and the gut and brain are also connected. And by changing what's going on in the anxiety center in the brain, you can change what's going on in vital organs in your body, such as the heart and the gut as well. So the next question is, well, what do you do? You know, how do you actually change what's going on in the blood flow in the amygdala? And I've come up with a 5-step process, which is going to sound really simple, but you know, I've done brain imaging research for 17 years, have actually seen patients throughout that time, and have really sort of gone through the research and stay abreast with the research. So what I want to say to people is, know that what you're going to be getting now sounds simple, but it's actually based on extensive research. And each of these 5 steps has a lot of data backing it up to show that it can actually work. And I've tried these as well on a lot of people, on thousands of people really, in workshop settings and individual settings, and people find this incredibly helpful. So let's just get to it. The mnemonic is CIRCA, and what CIRCA stands for, and I hope people are getting out a piece of paper and a pen and writing this down. The C is for chunking, and I'll explain each of these in a minute. The I is for ignore your thoughts. The R is for reality check. The C is for control check. And the A is for attention shift. Now let me tell you what each of these means, and what I'd love you to do is really think about this in terms of yourself and your own life, because for all of these paradigms, the frameworks are really helpful, but they're only helpful if you individualize them and make them relevant to you. So as you're writing this down, do be thinking yourself, how does this apply to me, and what is my problem and my major stressor, and how am I going to apply this approach, whether it's financial, whether it's relationship stress, whether it's work-related stress, regardless of what the stress is, make it relevant to you. So let's go into C for chunking. And C for chunking is a pretty cool technique, and it's really simple. It's basically, a lot of times the anxiety center is overwhelmed by getting, I need to make money because I need to make $100,000 more. I need to make $50,000 more. And your brain kind of freaks out. But if you chunk down what your goal is, and you chunk down what you need, and you say, well, okay, what can I do in the next week? What can I do in the next month? Chunking this down takes away this excessive blood flow that you've got in the anxiety center in the brain, and it sends it to where you need it. So the first tip then is that chunking, breaking down your big goal into smaller goals, can actually help you reduce your anxiety and stress in the moment. And you can do this all in even 5 minutes just to start yourself up. The I, which is about ignoring your thoughts or mental chatter, is something that you may not think is that helpful, but actually a lot of studies have shown that it's incredibly helpful when you're feeling anxious or stressed and your head is filled with thoughts and you're thinking, man, I just can't stop thinking. How am I going to pay my taxes? What am I going to do about this relationship? How am I going to meet next month's mortgage? Regardless of what that is, ignoring your mental chatter and simply placing your brain's attentional flashlight, which is simply the attentional center in the brain, on your breath. As simple as that sounds, and you can start by doing that for a minute and then go up to 5 minutes and then ideally 20 minutes, twice a day. If you do this, you actually will change the activation in your brain. You will help your brain become more creative. And studies have shown that this can even change your basic genetic function. So ignoring the mental chatter and practicing placing your brain's attentional system on your breath is a very useful intervention. And often it's particularly useful for that kind of anxiety that comes out of the blue that you can't even identify the cause of. So that's what the I stands for. The R, which is reality check, is really simply remembered as this too shall pass, which now may sound really obvious to you, but you know that feeling when you're caught up in anxiety and you're thinking, how am I going to do this, and how am I going to reach this target, and how am I going to cope with this loss that I've experienced? Well, remember that in life, we get so caught up in things that we forget that moments, these horrible moments, are going to pass. And simply reminding your brain of that, telling your brain that this moment is going to pass, immediately starts to calm it down, and it immediately sends blood to where you need it. The fourth step is control check. And this is where I like to tell people that the simple version of this is the Serenity Prayer, which basically says, figure out what you can control, figure out what you cannot control. And when you cannot control something, realize that you've got to give it up. Because I think in life what we try to do is, we get this whole ocean of problems. Everyone's trying to figure out, how do I control the ocean? How do I control these waves? Well, rather than controlling the ocean or controlling the waves, why not surf the waves? And I think that simple distinction, the distinction between giving things that you can control and things that you can't control, will allow you to surf the waves of life much more effectively. And so control check is really about teaching your brain that you need to give up the stuff that you cannot control. The last factor is attention shift. And really what this is that a lot of times the way we're wired is when something is freaking you out and something is stressing you out, your brain's flashlight or attention tends to go to it. And all it sees is threat. It sees all the negative stuff on TV. It sees all the negative stuff about yourself. It focuses on the self-hatred. It focuses on the negative qualities of others. And if you leave the brain in this default state, it's just going to keep on doing this. So you have the power, because you have a frontal cortex. Your prefrontal cortex is a very powerful part of your brain. You have the power to redirect this flashlight back onto the solution. The simple shift, moving from being problem-focused to solution-focused by asking, okay, the situation sucks, I don't like it, how do I allow myself to figure out a solution? You don't have to know what the solution is. This is what I call turning on the possibility brain. You don't have to know what the solution is. You just have to give your brain permission to tell the unconscious, your subconscious brain, that it needs to figure something out. And this may just sound theoretical, but the truth is, when your brain is stuck under threat, it really can't figure anything out. You need to release it to be able to take this flashlight and just ask the question, what's the solution? So this 5-step process called CIRCA, which is C is for chunking, break down your goal by time and phase. I is for ignore your mental chatter, which is simply place your attentional flashlight on your breath. R is for reality check, which is remember this too shall pass. C is for control check, which is identify 2 things that you cannot control and give them up, and then figure out 2 things that are easy to control and start there. And then the A is attentional shift, which is essentially take your flashlight away from the problem to the solution. And just doing this abstractly is not where you're going to get the most bang for the buck. Really, what you need to do is you need to say, okay, what's my issue? If my issue is financial and that's really stressing me out, let me break this up into goals for the next 12 months. Let me spend 5 minutes a day doing this thing about focusing on my breath so I can calm my brain down. Let me remember that whatever the stress is, it's going to go away. Let me remember that right now I can't really control how much I'm being paid because I don't want to leave my job, but I can control how much I'm saving. So let me just figure out what to do about that. And with the A, or attentional shift, yeah, I'm in financial straits right now, but you know what? I've overcome challenges before and I can do it again. And so now what I'm going to do is tell my brain, consciously I'm doing whatever I want to do. You work on what you need to work on subconsciously. And you know, a lot of people say, this brain talk, like, is it kind of hokey? I mean, is it real? Like, if you talk to yourself, can you really change your brain blood flow? You can. We now have an innumerable, really, number of studies that show us that with the right kind of brain talk, you can change what's going on in your brain. And what I hope that people really get from this is that CIRCA, this 5-step process, can be simply instituted right now to help you manage that stress so you can take control of what's going on in your brain psychologically as well as in the rest of your body.
Well, that's fantastic. I have to tell you, this is a first. With these interviews, I normally ask 3 or 4 follow-up questions to clarify things, but you were so clear and just so descriptive of this process that I just sat back and enjoyed it and learned a ton. So I really thank you for sharing this process with us. And I'd like you to take a minute now and tell people how they find out more about you and what you do and how to get in touch with you.
Thank you. Yeah, I would love for people to be in touch. There are a couple places that you can go to on the internet. One is drsrinipillay.com. It's DR and then S as in Sam, R as in room, I as in India, N as in Nancy, I as in India, Dr. Srini Pillay, Pillay.com, neurobusinessgroup.com, and then definitely check out our Facebook as well, because there's a lot of cool information there. Would love you to join Face Group of Dr. Srini Pillay as well as the Face Group of Neurobusiness Group.
Well, fantastic. Again, I want to thank you so much for your time today. This truly is cutting edge but simple at the same time, and I hope people appreciate just how elegant this process is. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Bob. Appreciate it.